Welcome to this video by Resident Tech Work. Today I'm going to be looking at adding an inventory system to Unreal Engine 5. I will be using the AGLS or Adventure Game Locomotion system for an example. However, this system can be used with any Unreal Engine project, as it uses standard techniques and is not unique to AGLS. The system will include the ability to pick up and keep items and drop them as well. Let's start by creating a new folder in our contents folder. We'll call it Inventory. Now the first thing we want to create is the actual inventory that we will carry. So we'll create a structure for our items. This will allow us to save our items in a common way that we can search them, add to them and select them for use in our game. So right click in the new folder and under Blueprints find Structures. Name it st_items. Open up and add variables for name, which will be a text type. This will be our item name. Then next will be quantity, which will be an integer. This is the quantity that we are carrying in this block. For some blocks this may actually be more than one. Leave up to yourselves. Stacks is a boolean. This is whether or not the item stacks. Next one's thumbnail, which will be a texture 2D. This is the image for the inventory window. And then the final one is a mesh, which is a static mesh object reference. And this is the actual mesh that will appear on screen for the player to pick up. Save and close that. Next we want to create the inventory window. This is the window that will actually appear on the screen. So in the same folder, right click under user interface, widget blueprint, user widget, call it WB_inventory and open it up. First pull in the canvas panel, then pull in an overlay, and on the right hand side in the details panel under anchors select the bottom left. Position X is 40, position Y is -325, size is 375 and Y is 150. Now this is the actual panel that will appear on the screen. So next drag in a border. On the right hand side click the fill horizontal and fill vertical alignment tags at the top of the details panel. Then pull in an image on top of the border. And go to the brush setting in the details panel and change it to a darker colour. A sort of grey is good. It's just so the inventory panel will actually show up on the screen. And in the padding, enter 2.5 to give it a small outline. Finally for this widget, drag in a wrap box and put it on top of the overlay. And give it the name IT Wrapper. Now make sure that you are actually selecting the wrap box. I selected the image at first by mistake there. So I say just make sure you've got selected the right item and give it the name IT Wrapper. And put a tick in the is variable box. And then fill horizontal and fill vertical. Compile and save, and you can close that. Next we're going to create the individual widgets for our items. So right click, user interface, widget blueprint and user widget. Call it WB_item slot. This will be the master widget that each item will be made from. So if you open that and pull in a size box. We're not using a canvas panel on this because we already have one on the inventory panel that this will sit on top of. In the details panel, in the height and width fields, enter 75. and if you pull the side of the screen over a wee bit, you'll see it says full screen at the very top. Change this to desired, as the widget only has to be the desired size, doesn't have to be the whole screen. Now just size that up a wee bit so you can see it. And if you now drag in a button, and this allows the system to see this item as a button. And in the details panel, select the button. In the details panel, name the button item button and click the is variable box. In the padding field at the top, enter 5, and this will have a small space between each item's button on the window. Down the bottom, I'll open up the styles and change the normal padding and pressed padding to 0. And then drag in an overlay. Select that, and in the details panel, click the fill horizontal and fill vertically buttons and change the padding to 0. Now drag in an image on top of the overlay. And we want to make sure you select that, and then name it item image, and again tick the is variable. In the detail panel, click the fill horizontal and fill vertical, and also change the padding to 0 again. This allows to add an image for each item in the inventory. Finally, drag in a text item. I'm going to name it item quantity, and tick the is variable again. Selected the wrong thing by accident again. Tick the is variable and change the colour. Now I'll use black. Change the size so it looks good in comparison to the box. I'll go with 25. And this text is so we can stack the items on top of each other. So that if you pick up 5 potions, for example, you only see one in your inventory rather than an item for each one. In the details panel, change the actual text to 99. Click the right align and bottom align button so the text appears at the bottom right. Compile, save, and open the graph. In here, create a new variable, call it items, and the type is the ST item structure that we made. And then tick the boxes for instance editable and expose on spawn. I move the event pre-construct into a more open space. Drag the items variable into the graph below that node and pull out a string and find the break ST item structure. Now above the pre-construct we'll pull in the item image variable, and from there find set brush from texture and connect. Just move that slightly. Now connect the thumbnail pin from the break to the texture pin of the set brush, and connect the set brush to the event node. Now if you drag in the item quantity variable above the set brush node and pull out a string and find set text. Now this is the one at the very bottom, and connect that up and connect the quantity pin from the break to the text, and then from the quantity pin we also want to pull out a string and find greater than and set the number to 1. This is to test if we're carrying more than one item of this type, so that we need to display the text element. If we're only carrying one, then we won't need the text element. From the greater than, find a branch, and above the branch drag in the item quantity, and off that search for set visibility widget. and connect that to the true pin of the branch. And make sure the visibility field is set to visible. Now we just basically want to do the same thing for the false branches. Copy that down and set the field to hidden. Then compile, save and close. Now to create some items for our examples, I'm going to be using a couple of Quixel assets from the Fab store. These are the military water bottle and the ceramic bottle. Now when you import them, they appear in their own Fab folder, but I want to move them into the inventory folder for easiness, and also rename each one, as their default names are just sort of random text. Now with that done, what I want to do now is drag an item into the scene and place it somewhere with a clear background. And once you're happy with the position, use the Windows key, Shift and S to get a screen grab of the item. Try to make it sort of reasonably square if you can. And I'm going to use the GIMP software, which is an image processor. That's free. You can create new with clipboard, and I'm going to just sort of make sure that image is square. Just there we go, and then go to the image menu and scale image and change that to 256 by 256. I want to click on the ellipse select tool and put a circle around that item. Then edit and stroke selection. And I'll just keep that as 10. Now, I could really do with a different colour on there. I don't know if I can choose that at this point. No, what? Okay. So select feather, use 15, and click OK. Now Control C to copy the image, and then Control Shift V to create a new image with a transparent background, and export that as a PNG and save to a convenient location on the computer. Now you can come back to the scene and delete the item. And I'll quickly do that for the ceramic bottle as well. Now if we come back to the main scene and just delete those items. And then go back into the items folders, and we can bring those images back in for each one. Bring them into the correct folders for each other. Okay, so now we have an inventory structure, an inventory window, and item buttons. We also have objects for our pickup items and thumbnails for the buttons. So how do we get them all to appear on screen? Well, first, let's get our items to appear. In our inventory folder, right-click, select Blueprint class, and then Actor, and name it BP_item. Open it and add a static mesh. Then in the variables, click Add and call it Item. And the type is ST item structure, which we created earlier. And tick the boxes for instance editable and expose on spawn in the details panel on the right hand side. And compile and save. Now if you open the construction script and drag in the item variable below the main node, pull out a string and search for break ST item structure. And above the main node, drag in the static mesh and pull out a string and search for set static mesh. And connect the break constructs mesh pin to the set mesh's new mesh pin. And connect, there we go. And then compile and save. And this creates a master item which we can then place around our scene and simply fill in the fields that the structure is added to the master item, so we can allow each item to be easily constructed. I'll pull one in just now, I'll show you where that is. And in the details panel down the bottom right, you'll see the item. There's an item field there. If you click in that, there's the structure items, and you can just simply fill those in for each item. So we can, if we go just now and just add a name, just put in the military bottle. Now I'm going to make that able to be stacked. And then add in the thumbnail and the mesh. Now one thing to note here is that as we've used static meshes, the item will appear exactly where you place them. So you place them mid-air, they will appear in mid-air, which is great if you want a sort of magic type game. But if you want them to be on the ground, go back to the construction script and add set simulate physics static mesh to the end of the line. And then go into the compile and then static mesh on the left and change the collision presets to physics actor. Compile and save. And if you go back now, your item will appear on the ground. I'll just bring that down slightly. I'll now play. There it is on the ground. So now we have the items that appear on screen. How do we get them into our inventory? We'll go into our inventory folder, right click, select blueprint class and actor component. And we want to name this BP underscore inventory component. Now without opening that, go to the character blueprint and in the components list on the left, click add. And we want to type in BP underscore inventory component. And that will add that to the character. So compile and save. And then we want to come back to the inventory component blueprint. And now we want to open it. And from the event begin play node, drag out a string and find create widget. The class here will be WB underscore inventory, which we created at the start. Promote the output to a variable and call it inventory widget. Now add a new variable, call it items, and its type is the ST item structure that we created. And in the details tab at the far end, change the icon type to array. This allows us to select the individual items from that array. Compile and save, and go to the items field, which has appeared at the bottom of the details panel. You can click the plus sign to create new items, but we're not going to do that here. So close that and drag the items variable in. And select get. Drag out and find resize. And we're going to be making this inventory size 10. And let's create 10 slots in the inventory window. Compile and save. Now below all of this, drag in the inventory widget variable. Drag out and find is visible. This produces a boolean, so connect this to a branch. And from the true pin, find remove from parent. You'll have to tick out that box. It is. And from the false, find add to viewport. The target for both of these is the inventory widget as well. Just drag that in and connect the two. From the input of the branch, we want to connect the action key for activating the inventory and visibility. So compile and save, and let's go and create some key bindings. Go to the inputs folder. In AGLS, this is the content, advanced locomotion v4 and inputs. Right click in here, find inputs and input actions. And I call this first one IA_inventory. Then without opening it, right click, inputs, input action, create another one. We'll call this IA_pickup. And without opening this one either, go to the IMC motion matching, or whatever motion matching you're using in your project. Open it up and click the plus sign at the top. And at the bottom find the new mapping. Search for IA inventory. I'm mapping this to the I key. And then back up to the top to click the plus sign again and search for IA_pickup. And I'll be mapping this to the U key. You can of course use whatever key you want. These just happen to be keys that are not currently in use on AGLS, so it just makes it that little bit easier. So save and close. And then back in the inventory, right click and find the IA inventory event and connect the started pin to that branch. And then compile and save. And this allows the inventory window to appear or vanish on our screen. Now going back to our inventory folder, if we now open the WB inventory widget again, go to the graph, and under functions click the add button and create a new function called load inventory. Now on this we want to create an input. Move that across there. And we want to create an input called inventory. And the type is BP inventory component, and it's object reference for that. And compile and save to get this register. Now above the main node, drag in the IT wrapper variable, pull out a string and find clear children. Attach this to the main node. I'll explain what this does in a minute. From the main node, then drag out a string from the inventory pin and find get items, and from that a for each loop. Connect that back to the clear children. From the loop body, search for create widget, and the class is WB item slot. The array element pin on the for each loop connects to the items pin on the new widget node. drag in the IT wrapper variable above the create widget and search for add children to wrap box and connect the return value of the create widget to the content pin of the add child. This function adds an item slot for each item that is found in the array. The clear children node at the start makes sure the inventory window always starts empty, so if you've dropped something it will not show up by accident. You can compile, save and close that. Back in the inventory component, in the event graph, drag in the inventory widget variable above the resize node and pull out a string and find the load inventory function that we've just created and connect it back to the resize node. For the inventory pin, get a reference to itself, as this is the inventory component. Now we've set up the abilities to see our items, but how do we pick them up? We're going to use a combination of the AI pickup mapping that we created and a sphere collision on the item. So first go into the BP item and under components click add and search for sphere collision. Right click on the sphere in the menu and choose add event, and on component begin overlap and on component end overlap. In variables, add a new variable called pickable. This will be a boolean. Drag pickable into the graph and select set. And from the begin overlap we want pickable to be true, and from the end overlap we want pickable to be false. We also need to know when this is the case, so we'll have to create another widget in our folder. So go back to the main folder, right click, user interface, widget blueprint, user interface, and call it WB pick icon. Open this and add a canvas panel. Then drag in a vertical box and go to anchors in the details panel and set it to center. Position X and Y are 0 and alignment is 0.5 on both sides. Tick the size to content box and drag in an image. Now I've found a U icon on Pixabay, which I will import into the main folder. Save that and then back to the pick icon and bring that into the image there. Now it comes in a bit big, so we'll go to the image size and we'll change that to 50 by 50. And then we can drag in a text item and bring that up a bit so you can see it a bit better. And change the text to pickup. Actually looks a bit squashed, so I think we'll change that to 75 by 75 on the image. That's a bit better. And compile and save. Now if we go back to the BP item event graph and in components add a widget. In the detail panel, find the class and make it WB pick icon, and search for space as well and change that to screen. So in the event graph we now have a reference to our widget, so pull it in and search for set visibility. Now from the true side we want the visibility to be true. So make sure you tick that box, then just copy that down and link up on the false side, but take that tick back out because we want that to be false. And finally, from the nodes that were available originally, up here, grab the event begin play, drag it down below the end overlap and connect it to the false visibility. This is so that when we start, the icon isn't visible straight away. I'll just move this up a wee bit so you can actually see it. Compile and save. We now have our item on screen with an icon showing the pickup option when you approach it. So to pick it up, go to the BP inventory component, and below everything we've done so far, search for the IA pickup event. And from the started pin, draw out a string and search for sphere trace by channel. Make sure you pick that one and not the multi-trace. Below the input event, search for get player character. Pull a string out and find get actor location. Then add and put a -50 in the Z field. And connect this to both the start and end pins of the trace. This is so that the trace is reasonably close to his feet. Set the radius to 90. Set the trace channel to interactive object. And to get this to find the item, go to the BP item. And under the collision presets, change that to custom. And find the interactive object and change that to block. And then compile and save that. And back to the BP inventory component. From the get hit from the sphere trace, break the hit result. And find the hit actor and cast it to the BP item. And you want to promote this to a variable. And name it BP item ref. This is just so we've got a reference to the item that we're picking up as we're working our way through this, because it's quite a lengthy piece. Draw out a branch. And from the as BP item, draw out and find pickable. And connect the Boolean output of this to the branch condition. Draw a string from the true pin and find for each loop. And for the array, drag in the items variable. From the loop pin, search for is valid. And make sure you pick out the right one. And attach the BP item to the input object. This is because as we pick up items, the loop may become invalid and cause errors, so it's better to check that our item still exists so the loop can continue. So from the loop, promote the array index to a variable and call it used index. This is so we have a reference to the index number. From the loop array element pin, draw out and break the ST items. Now, If we go back to the BP item reference and pull out a string to the area below the break and search for item, and then break the ST items down there as well, what this actually gives us is information on the item we're picking up. Now we want to compare the name pins here, so pull one of the names out and use the double equals to find the text equivalent. From the result pin, find an AND boolean and connect the condition pin to the stacks pin of the item we are picking up. Take the result pin and find a branch. This tells us if we're carrying an item already and it's stackable. From the branch's true pin, find an increment node by pressing plus twice. And connect the quantity of the top break node to the input. This is actually the quantity that is in our inventory rather than what we're picking up. Now we have to add this item to our inventory. So pull a string out of the increment node and find set array element. For this node we need to drag in the variables of items and connect it to the target. The used index connects to the index pin, and for the item pin we need to find make ST items. To the left of all this, pull in the BP item reference, pull out and find item, and then break ST items. Now I want to connect all of the pins to each other here except for the quantity, which we'll take from the incremental node. So name to name, stack to stack, thumbnail, and mesh. And then take the quantity from there. Just move this along a bit so you can see it a bit clearer. Now the item is added to the inventory, we want to use the load inventory function we created earlier to update. So we want to use the inventory widget variable for the target and a reference to self for the inventory pin. Then we want to connect that to a destroy actor node. And this will have the BP item ref as the target. So this sequence has added the item to our inventory and destroyed the item on screen for an item that we are picking up where we already have one in the inventory. But what about picking up a new item? We have to go back to the branch node and from the false pin pull out and make another branch. Now we're picking up a new item. The quantity in the inventory is obviously 0, but we still need to test for that to make sure. So use a routing pin on the increment input that we already used to create a small node and pull out of that node and use a equals and put a 0 in that field. It connects to the condition pin of the branch. From the true pin, find set array element. Use the items variable for the target, the used index for the index, and pull back a string from the item pin and find make st items. Now connect the pins from the item pickup break node and connect them all to the new make node, except for the quantity again. So name to name, mesh, thumbnail, everything except for the quantity. And the quantity here we'll set to 1. Finally connect that set array output to the load inventory node that we already have. Okay. And compile and save. Okay, if we press play now, you can see that we can see the items in the scene, and we can go and pick them up. When I press the inventory button, up it comes with the correct items on. But now we can't drop them, so that's the next thing. First, we need to have a mouse pointer on screen when we activate the inventory, otherwise we can't drop the items. So back in the inventory folder, open the inventory component again and find the IA inventory event. And move the inventory widget, remove from parent, add to viewport nodes along a bit. And below the branch at the start of the sequence, just search for get player controller. Draw it from this and find set mouse cursor. And tick the box and then pull the string out and find set input mode, game and UI. And connect that to the add viewport, and from the player controller connect that into the pin there. Whilst we're here, also change the Z order to 10, as AGLS has other UI elements that make this necessary. Copy the player controller and mouse nodes and place them after the remove from parent node. And take the tick out of that set mouse cursor node. And then pull a string out of the mouse cursor and set input mode game only, and connect the player controller into that pin there, and compile and save.
And next we need to have a way of dropping the item.
So back in our inventory folder, open the WB item slot. And in the designer, select the item button, and at the bottom of the details panel, click on the onClicked event. And the first thing we have to do here is create a variable for the index number of the item that we are dropping. So in the variables, add an index item with type integer. From the node, pull out and first make a branch. And above the onClicked node, pull in the items variable. Pull string out and find break st items. From the quantity pin, pull out a greater than or equal to node and make the value 2. And connect the output to the branch condition pin. From the true pin, pull out and find a decrement mode node by pressing minus twice. Connect the break node's quantity pin to this as well. From the decrement node, find spawn actor by class. The class here is BP item. Collision handling should be always spawn ignore collisions. And drag the items variable into the item pin. Now under the decrement pin, find get player character. And then get actor transform. Connect the result to the transform pin, and this will spawn the item from the character. Above the spawn node, find make st items. And just like before, connect all the pins from the break to the make except the quantity. And take the quantity from the decrement node into the input of that make st. From the spawn node, find set array elements. Okay, at this point we also need another variable. So if you click on the plus and add a variable called inventory, and its type is our BP inventory component, an object reference, and pull that in, and then get items. And attach that to the target of the set array node. Drag in the index variable for the index pin and connect the make st item output to the item pin. To the right of this, drag in the inventory variable and search for the inventory widget of that. And then the load inventory function that we made earlier. This sequence checks if we are carrying 2 or more of an item. If we are, then it decreases the amount by 1, spawns the item, and then sets the array element and updates the load inventory function so the on-screen inventory is correct. Now we need to do the same for dropping a single item. So go back to the branch. And from the false pin, find another branch. Double click on the string going into the less than or equal to node to create a root node. I'll just tidy this up slightly. Find an equals node of that and enter 1 as the value. And connect this output to the new branch. Now, all I have to do here really is copy the spawn, get player, get transform and item nodes from above and connect them to that new branch on the true pin. Also from above, copy the set array inventory, target items and index nodes from above and connect them to the spawn output. For the item pin, similar to the setup above, we need to find make st items. But this time we're going to leave all the fields blank so that if we're carrying one item and spawn it, it sets the array to have nothing in it. And connect that to the load inventory. And I've just noticed that inventory pin doesn't have anything connected to it, so drag the line from that inventory above. And I better check those variables I put in earlier. Yep, they should be instance editable and expose on spawn for both of them. So let's put the tick boxes in. That's better. And then compile and save. And then go back to our inventory folder and go back to the WB inventory widget. Go into the graph. And in here, make sure you're in the load inventory function. And under file menu, find refresh all nodes. And you'll see 2 nodes appear on that make widget. So from the loop node, connect the index pin. And from the load inventory node, connect the inventory pin. Compile and save all. And if we now run our default scene, go and pick a few items up. And when we go to drop them, you can see they're actually floating in the air. This is because although we set simulated physics earlier, the items are now spawning after the engine has tried to apply the physics, so it doesn't work. The way to remedy this is to go back to the BP item. And in the events graph, in the events graph. There we go. Add set simulate physics mesh between that event, begin play, and the set of visibility. And tick that box. And while we're here, static mesh, tick the boxes for the X and Y on lock rotation. And compile and save. And now if we go back to the default scene and try again. And now when we drop the items, they spawn and drop to the ground upright. It can also be picked back up. So there we go, a working inventory system. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.